Welcome to a place where family secrets don't stay buried and silence is never the ending. Here, the stories begin the moment someone is told to leave, to disappear, to carry shame that was never theirs. You'll hear about doors slammed shut at 18, about love that arrived dressed as rescue but hid control behind closed doors, and about marriages built not on devotion but on carefully negotiated lies. These are stories of patience, not panic, of truth uncovered through documents, overheard confessions, and one mistake too many. And when the truth finally comes out, it doesn't come with screaming or tears. It comes with timing, proof, and consequences no one saw coming. If you're drawn to raw emotion, hidden betrayals, and the kind of revenge that unfolds quietly but lands publicly, you're exactly where you need to be. Every story here proves one thing: the past always catches up, and truth always collects its debt. 18 arrived with a heartbeat that wasn't supposed to exist, at least not in that house. The news didn't land as fear or concern, it landed as disgust. A father's eyes hardened, not because of sin, but because of memory. The words came fast and rehearsed, like a verdict already decided. This wasn't about right or wrong. It was about reputation, neighbors, church pews, and the lie he'd spent years polishing. A past mistake had almost ruined him once, and now history was daring to repeat itself. The suitcase was shoved into trembling hands before the shock could settle. No questions about safety, no concern for the child, just one command: leave and don't look back. The door closed with a finality that echoed louder than any scream. That sound carried a truth that took years to fully understand. Love in that family was always conditional. That night became a lesson in survival. Cold air, borrowed couches, and silence taught more than any lecture ever could. Hunger sharpened instincts. Fear hardened resolve. Somewhere between tears and exhaustion, something unbreakable formed. Dependence was a luxury no longer allowed. Forgiveness became a currency that would not be handed out freely. What went unseen was how that rejection carved a path straight into another trap. Marriage later promised rescue, stability, and protection. The man who offered it spoke gently about fresh starts and shared burdens. What he never mentioned were the quiet phone calls, the financial strings, and the way his loyalty bent toward the same people who had slammed that door shut years earlier. Trust was given because survival demanded it. The first betrayal didn't announce itself. It whispered through unexplained absences and decisions made without consent. Money disappeared, plans changed, truth became slippery. Only later would it become clear that the husband knew far more about that night at 18 than he ever admitted. Conversations had happened, agreements had been made, silence held price, and marriage had been part of the payment. That realization didn't break anything, it clarified everything. Being thrown out wasn't the end of a life, it was the beginning of a reckoning that none of them saw coming. Marriage arrived dressed as rescue. A steady voice, a ring placed with careful timing, and promises spoken like vows to a future that would never resemble the past. Safety was the word repeated most often. Stability followed close behind. After years of scrambling just to breathe, those words felt like shelter. What wasn't visible yet was how closely protection can resemble a cage. Behind closed doors, love came with conditions. Bank accounts stayed just out of reach. Paychecks were redirected for planning. Questions were met with smiles that never reached the eyes. Control didn't arrive all at once. It crept in slowly, disguised as concern. Why worry about money? Why carry stress? Trust was requested, then expected, then enforced. Responsibility changed everything. The moment life required more than affection, loyalty thinned. Late nights multiplied. Calls were taken in other rooms. Decisions were announced, never discussed. Each time doubt surfaced, reassurance followed. Soft words, practiced apologies, and the reminder that everything was being handled. That lie became a daily ritual. The real damage came from what wasn't said. A chance overheard conversation cracked the surface. A familiar name slipped from his mouth, followed by laughter that didn't belong in a marriage. The same family that had turned its back years ago was still present, still influential, still pulling strings. Meetings had happened long before the wedding. Agreements were made quietly, neatly, without consent. Marriage hadn't been an escape. It had been a solution for them. Money became the language of betrayal. Loans taken out without knowledge, assets placed under other names. Every financial move traced back to the same source, the same people who once decided that being inconvenient made someone disposable. The husband knew. Worse, he participated. Silence was exchanged for security, obedience for approval. Love, it turned out, was never the goal. Containment was. Keeping the past quiet, keeping truths buried, keeping control firmly in familiar hands. Every promise whispered in bed had an audience that was never acknowledged. Trust wasn't broken in a single moment. It was sold piece by piece. The final realization didn't arrive with tears. It came with clarity. Marriage hadn't failed by accident. It had succeeded exactly as it was designed to, until the truth refused to stay hidden. The truth didn't explode all at once. It surfaced slowly, through paper cuts and whispers, through moments that felt insignificant until they stacked into something impossible to ignore. A misplaced folder tucked behind tax returns, a signature that looked too familiar, dates that didn't align with the stories that had been told for years. What started as confusion turned into a quiet, relentless search for answers. The documents told a story that mouths never would. Financial transfers marked as assistance, legal consultations dated months before the wedding. One agreement referenced family resolution, a phrase that had no place in a marriage built on love. Each page tightened the knot in the chest. None of it existed by accident. None of it existed without consent from more than one person. Then came the conversations. Late-night calls overheard from the hallway, voices lowered, names spoken carelessly. A father's name said with familiarity, not resentment. Laughter followed, casual and cruel. Whatever exile had happened at 18 hadn't been a rash decision fueled by shame. It had been planned, coordinated, executed with precision. The confession arrived without drama. A glass of wine too many, a moment of arrogance mistaken for safety. He spoke as if recounting a clever strategy, not a betrayal, said it had been necessary, said things would have gotten messy otherwise. The pregnancy had threatened old secrets, ones that could dismantle reputations and reopen scandals long buried. Sending someone away had been cleaner. Marriage later had been insurance. Silence, it turned out, had a price tag: financial support, legal cover, a controlled narrative. Dignity was traded for stability, and autonomy was signed away without permission. The husband hadn't just known, he had benefited. Every comfort, every advantage traced back to that original act of exile. Love hadn't been the foundation of the marriage. Damage control had. What hurt most wasn't the betrayal itself, but the realization that every struggle endured had been unnecessary. The nights spent wondering what had been done wrong, the years spent proving worth, all of it built on a lie designed to protect two men afraid of consequences. That knowledge changed everything. Fear dissolved, guilt evaporated. The truth didn't feel heavy anymore, it felt sharp. And sharp things are meant to cut. They thought burying the truth would keep it quiet, but all they really did was give it time to grow teeth. Revenge didn't announce itself. It moved quietly, hidden behind routine smiles and calm responses. While they believed control was still theirs, patience was doing the real work. Every document was copied, every message archived, every financial trail mapped with care. The same legal language once used to silence became the sharpest weapon available. The husband never noticed the shift. Confidence made him careless. He kept talking, kept signing, kept assuming loyalty where none existed anymore. Assets placed under false security were slowly repositioned. Accounts once locked away were traced and documented. The lies grew heavier as the evidence stacked higher. Truth doesn't need urgency. It only needs timing. The moment was chosen carefully. A family gathering meant to celebrate appearances. Lawyers already informed, papers already filed. What they expected was gratitude and silence. What they received was exposure. The first envelope landed on the table without a word. Confusion followed. Then panic. Numbers don't lie, and signatures don't forget. The husband's face changed first. The color drained as names, dates, and transfers were read aloud. Connections he believed invisible were suddenly impossible to deny. The father tried to speak, but the room had shifted. Authority evaporated under the weight of proof. The same people who once decided exile was convenient now struggled to explain themselves. Reputations cracked in real time. The marriage unraveled where it stood, stripped of its illusions. Financial control flipped instantly when court orders took effect. Properties frozen, accounts seized, agreements voided. Silence was no longer an option. Their carefully built image collapsed under the simplest force of all: truth spoken without fear. What hurt them most wasn't the legal fallout. It was the audience. Neighbors, colleagues, relatives, everyone who had been fed a version of events that painted judgment as righteousness. Watching respect turn into suspicion was the punishment they never planned for. Shame finally found its rightful owners. No yelling followed, no satisfaction was declared. There was no need. The work had already been done. Walking away felt lighter than expected, not because justice was loud, but because it was complete. The past no longer dictated the future. Control had changed hands without a single raised voice. They thought revenge would look like anger. They were wrong. It looked like freedom backed by facts they could never erase. If this story pulled you in, don't let it end here. Like the video to support stories that expose what families try to hide, and subscribe so you don't miss the next truth waiting to be told. New stories drop regularly, and each one digs deeper into secrets, betrayal, and justice that arrives right on time. Turn on notifications, stay with the channel, and remember, some endings are quiet, but they're never weak.